Okay, welcome everyone to the March 15th special called board meeting. I would like to officially call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with an apology. We had some internet issues, but we believe we have those resolved now. And so we will begin with approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and I will turn this over to Dr. Houlihan to present his information from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, board members. Hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. So we're coming this evening to share information with you regarding the recent announcement from the governor and members of Senate and House leadership, as well as the state superintendent last week, regarding what was then Senate Bill 220, which has now become Session Law 2021-4. This Senate bill was signed on last Thursday evening, I believe. The bill requires elementary schools to use Plan A for in-person instruction, which is no change for us for Union County Public Schools. Middle and high schools in this legislation must offer either Plan A or Plan B. Local boards are authorized to provide the option to participate in Plan A for students who have an individualized education plan, which we'll refer to in this meeting as an IEP, or a 504. And if districts decide to move to Plan A for middle and high school, local boards must notify the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services of their implementation plan. Here is just a quick summary. Should not be anything new for us, but this is a quick summary of the guidance from Lighting Our Way Forward with the toolkit in terms of reopening for schools under Plan A, which is minimal social distance, Plan B, which is a hybrid, Plan C, full remote learning, and then what we're offering this year, a Plan D, virtual academy, school within a school. So over the course of, since that announcement, I've had the chance to meet with our cabinet level staff, principals in middle and high schools, as well as teacher representatives from middle and high schools. And tonight I am recommending that beginning on Monday, April 12th, which is the first day after spring break and the last day of the grading period, that we allow our 6th through 12th grade students to move to Plan A. Monday is a current remote learning day on the calendar. Part of this recommendation is to make that an in-person learning day as opposed to a remote learning day. We are asking the board to consider having Plan A aligned with our elementary structure, which is 4 days a week with Friday as a remote learning day. As you all know, as we talked to the last board meeting, I did go back to our team and with the discussion around adding a 5th day of in-person learning for Fridays. That continues to be the option to have remote learning on Fridays continues to be the ask of our teacher representatives and our principals. Today in the state board meeting, it was a recommendation from DPI to the state board that under Plan A, middle schools and high schools could operate in at least a 4-day per week setting. And it's my understanding that that recommendation was approved this evening. And this date would allow us ample time to look at how we might want to adjust master schedules, look at any class load issues we will have, and to better operationalize the support we need to put in place from a transportation, child nutrition, logistics standpoint to be prepared to move middle and high schools into Plan A. I'd like to invite Mr. McCraw to comment on Plan A health and safety requirements as it pertains to the North Carolina toolkit. So Mr. McGraw, if you want to unmute and come on.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Houlihan. Good evening, board members. Happy Monday to each one of you. I'm pleased to talk about the health and safety portion tonight. Since the beginning of the pandemic and since we returned to school back on August 17th, health and safety has been our primary focus during the pandemic. As we move toward Plan A for middle and high schools, Plan A does not require that schools reduce the usual number of students in the classroom. With minimal social distancing, 6-foot social distancing is no longer required. So it will reduce the usual number of students in the classroom, will not. Plan A does not require social distancing on school buses either. We will, though, continue to do our daily symptom screenings and temperature checks for all students and any person who may enter a UCPS building or facility. Social distancing protocols will be required for anyone who enters a school building. UCPS will continue to limit visitors per the North Carolina Safe Schools Toolkit in school buildings under Plan A. All students must wear face coverings in school and on school buses. That's per the governor's mandate on face coverings. And then all staff must also wear face coverings in school buildings and in offices, and that is per the governor's mandate at this time. UCPS will continue to provide face coverings for students, teachers, and staff who may need one. We've worked with the county and we've worked with emergency management locally and from the state, and we have face coverings if anyone needs one, and we can provide those to schools and bus riders. A little bit on the operational planning side of the health and safety. We will be prepared to notify the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services of Union County Schools' intention to move middle and high schools to Plan A and provide a plan. We are working with them to see if they have a template that they want us to use, but we're prepared to provide that to Health and Human Services. We will also, as required, participate in the ABC Science Collaborative. That's part of Senate Bill 220. We're prepared to provide the data that is requested and is required of the Science Collaborative. One big item on the operations side, our employees on March 19th and 20th, which is this Friday and Saturday, will receive their second dose of the COVID vaccine. In partnership with Atrium Health and Union County Public Health, back in February, we had the first dose for approximately 2,000 employees. They will receive their second vaccine March 19th and 20th. That means on April 3rd will be their 14 days post their second vaccine, and they will be considered fully vaccinated at that point. Our employees will. Also, our subs and others receive that. We will make updates to morning arrival processes and afternoon dismissal to accommodate safety screenings for larger groups of students. We do know from experience with elementaries moving to Plan A that arrival took a little longer, and that caused some backups in car rider lines. That also can cause backups onto traveled roadways. It'll take us a week or two to adjust to make sure that we're doing it as efficiently and safely as possible. Also, we'll continue to consult daily and just anytime we need to with our local Union County public health officials. They've been so good. Michelle Lancaster, Dennis Joyner, and Michelle McGrath, they've worked with our nurse supervisors and our nurses, and we've consulted with them, and we'll continue to consult with them as we move toward Plan A at middle and high schools. One other item, we will consult with staff to address logistics such as transportation needs, school nutrition needs, facilities needs, and daily we're gathering overall staffing levels at each school to make sure that there are no concerns related to COVID. That concludes the health and safety portion, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. So we do want to address questions that we are going to have with regards to the Plan D. We have students right now who are on full virtual. That virtual academy option will continue to be made available. When we were coming up to our 5 o'clock deadline for our meeting tonight, as I mentioned, the state board was meeting to consider additional policy guidance. Part of the guidance that I believe was adopted this evening, and I did not have a chance to update the second bullet, was that any student that wants in-person learning, we must make that available. So we believe that for our students that are on Plan D, as in David, per the vote on this issue from the state board, that we must offer in-person learning or Plan A if they like it. They are not required to take it, but for any current general education student on Plan D, based on the action by the state board, I believe we have to offer that Plan A for those students. And then the last piece of this, again, per the legislation, any student with an IEP or a 504 must be offered Plan A, but they can also remain on Plan D. And school staff from across all of our middle and high schools would be reaching out to families prior to spring break to make sure they're aware of that option and that consideration. The other thing that I wanted to comment specifically to kind of virtual learning is we also recognize that there may be students that at the beginning of the pandemic that have been mostly at the high school level that have had things like a job or other situations come up, such as quarantining or any particular item that would require them to be at home learning virtually. If the board supports this and moves in this direction, if we move middle and high schools to Plan A, if you're a student that has a circumstance that prevents you from coming all 4 days and you need to continue some kind of remote or virtual learning, we would ask that you work with your building administrators and your teachers to develop a plan to stay engaged with your learning, to complete assignments, and to make sure that you're being as successful as possible. But if we move to Plan A, we do want our students to know we want you in school. We value in-person learning as well, and that should be the default. But we understand there may be some exceptions, and we'll work individually with students on that. So here's a summary recommendation. I'm not going to go into all of this. I do want the board to know under Plan C with this recent legislation, moving forward, only the governor has the authority to move a district to Plan C. We still have the authority to move individual classrooms or grade levels or schools to Plan C, but moving the entire district to that option is really at the state level at this point, and that was per the recent legislation passed. Here's the recommended timeline for the board to consider this evening. If approved, we will communicate to parents about those options tomorrow. We would spend the next 2 weeks preparing our schools for additional students. April the 1st is a teacher workday. We're proposing to keep that as is. Friday is Good Friday, and we will not be in school. That is the first day of the beginning of our spring break. And then Plan A would happen when we come back on April 12th. And finally, here are a few next steps. Finalizing these plans, continue to meet with our stakeholders to make sure that we're in good shape to prepare for Monday the 12th, and work on any communication to parents and employees about their options. So, Ms. Merrill and board members, that concludes my presentation this evening. Staff and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. I know you and your staff have been working really hard on this, even before this vote occurred last week. So I want to thank you and your staff and reaching out to all of our principals and teachers to provide them an opportunity to help you with this recommendation. I'm going to open it up to the board at this time. If there are any board members that have any questions from the presentation.
I have a question.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
I have a question.
Okay, Kathy first and then Todd.
Okay, I have a couple really quick ones. Mr. McCraw, what happens if there's an exposure? So we talked about this for Plan A for the elementary schools. What does that look like for middle and high? Because in the elementary schools, the students mostly stay in a group with their class, but in middle and high school, they mix up at every class. And then I have 2 more questions after that.
So Ms. Heintel, the plans require us to still have robust contact tracing programs, which we do because we have nurses in every school. We've been in school since August 17th, so we've been doing contact tracing. When we add more students, and because you do switch classes more at middle and high school, what we're going to do is we're going to work with principals on seating plans, seating charts, where we keep students together as much as possible. So the students that are within 6 feet of them will still be considered close contacts if that's for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more. But we hope to limit the exposures only to those students who are within 6 feet and not entire classes.
That would not be entire class. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what our hopes are. I want everyone to know, though, when you add more students, you're likely to have more cases, and you're more likely to have more people who are considered close contacts and have to move to Plan C, just like we have at elementary schools. But we do have plans to limit that.
Great. So if a staff member is fully vaccinated, and they have an exposure, do they have to quarantine, or are we taking the CDC's recommendation?
We are taking the CDC's recommendation, Ms. Heintel. After the 14 days post your second vaccine, when you're considered fully vaccinated, as long as you're asymptomatic, you can remain at work or at school. And that's one of the benefits of the April 3rd is when our staff will be fully vaccinated. We have 2,000 people that will be vaccinated March 19th and 20th. Then April 3rd will be 14 days post-vaccine.
Thank you, Jared. One more follow-on question on this. Dr. Houlihan, if we have students that are quarantined because of exposures, how are they going, and they're in Plan A, how will they learn?
Talking with staff, our middle and high schools have been in this hybrid situation with live streaming lessons, providing assignments on their Canvas pages, et cetera. That's not going to change. Elementary, if you remember, you either are on Plan A or Plan D, and we have teachers that were staffed in that way. With middle and high schools, it's a little bit more complicated. So if we have students that are quarantined, you still will be able to access the live streaming, the virtual options, no matter what.
Okay, that's good to know. And we talked about how Plan D students under the state board can go to Plan A under this. What about students who are currently in Plan B going to Plan A? Can they go to Plan D?
Yes, I believe the legislation requires us to offer all families who want their child to be full remote, that has to be an offering. So any family who would want to have their child move from Plan B to Plan B as in boy to D as in David, we would meet that request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Price.
Madam Chair, thank you, Kathy. That was one of my questions. My second one is you're recommending, or staff is recommending 4 days versus 5. Can you dive in a little bit deeper why that is your recommendation?
Sure thing. And I'll repeat some of what I said a few weeks ago. Number one, I like the fact, and our staff likes the fact, that on Fridays we use those days to do more of a thorough cleaning to prepare for kids coming back on Mondays. I think for middle and high school, when you're adding additional bodies in 4 days a week, I think the cleaning piece is going to be really critical to making sure that we're prepared on that end coming back on Plan A. I also think that has been the number one request of our teachers and principals, so that we use those times to provide intervention support, small group instruction, lessons that are still benefiting children, because we have to make sure we're still teaching and learning on Fridays. That is not an off day, shouldn't be. So, in this situation, they're, hopefully using those for planning, for small group intervention, individualized student support, allowing kids a chance to kind of catch up And also, I think it gives us some additional time, like I said, for cleaning to be put into place. And as a reminder, our teachers have to make sure that they are basically 2 weeks ahead in the event we move to Plan C, keeping their Canvas pages updated, lesson plans updated. And so that time is also spent to a degree working with colleagues to make sure that from a teaching and learning standpoint, they're prepared if we have to move them into that direction. Those are a few of the reasons, the main reasons.
I'd like to ask a question while we're on that 4 versus 5 days. So can you clarify today's decision from the State Board of Education? Did they, were they positioning middle schools and high schools to only be 4 days, or do they not recommend 5 days?
The only adoption that I read and saw was that in defining in-person instruction for grades 6 through 12, districts must offer at least 4 days of in-person learning. That was the language used in the document that was approved by the State Board.
So 4 days was the minimum.
That is correct.
Okay. And it was required.
That is correct.
And we're only talking about middle and high school. When we're talking about A to D and D to A, that's only for middle and high, right? We're not going back to elementary, or are we going back to elementary?
A couple of things, I think, and I'll have to defer to Ms. Morris if I get this wrong. Let me back up. So on April 12th, if the board approves this, just want to be clear, that remote learning day would become an in-person learning day for everyone, K-12. On the choice of, okay, elementary students are currently on Plan A and now they want Plan D. We've already had those discussions with elementary back in the fall. So unless a parent makes an individual request, I believe the legislation would say that we have to offer that, but we've been offering that to elementary since day one. So unless Ms. Morris disagrees with my interpretation, then I think we're fine on that end. And this would only be applicable to middle and high schools because we're making a change. And Michelle, you can comment if you'd like.
I don't disagree with what you just said.
Thanks.
Sure.
Can I? Oh,
Mr. Sides,
sorry.
Mr. Sides, and then we'll do Mr. Sides and then Mrs. May.
Well, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay.
No.
I was going to make a motion. I wasn't going to ask the questions. So.
Okay,
Oh.
then Mrs. May.
Okay. I know it's a last minute in terms of knowing about this switch where Plan D can go to Plan B, A for middle and high. Do you have any idea like when we'll be able to put out information so that families know what the process will be? Like what, in a week or?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if the board, regardless, I think that's kind of where we have to go per the law. So Ms. Morris will be working with Ms. Stalbert on that communication plan specifically for Plan D families. And I would expect that rollout to begin tomorrow.
Oh, good. Okay.
And would that be through Scribbles?
That's I don't know the technicals on how we want to process that. I'll have to defer that to Ms. Morris.
Okay.
Question, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Benchen.
Dr. Houlihan, in your discussions and deliberations with the principals and staff and faculty, was there anyone that declared they was unable to go 5 days, or was the 4 days, as you have outlined, their concern? Was there anyone that, you know, if the trigger was pulled, declared that they was unable to perform that 5-day task?
No, sir. To be honest, no one said that they couldn't or wouldn't. It was just simply their choice, and their request was to remain on 4 days.
Okay, because my advocacy at the last meeting, Gary brought up some strong points, and a lot of what Gary said really has kind of come to pass. So Gary kind of nailed it at the last meeting. But my concern is I advocated for that 4 days, simply because we were one of the few counties in the only county in this area that I could really think of that took advantage back in the fall. And so we were far ahead. So we're a leading county. We lead the pack. Now my advocacy, especially with the fact that the governor, the Senate pro tem, the House Speaker have all come together and determined that our children need to be back in school. Now my advocacy is for the children. And so if we're going to move forward, you know, let's move forward full bore, full steam ahead to get these kids all that they can get, even in this short period remaining for the school year. That's my feelings on the matter.
Thank you, Reverend Benson. I will let the board know, just based on other conversations with my fellow superintendents, and I know that Cabarrus County met on Friday night. They are implementing a very similar proposal beginning at the week of April 12th, 4 days a week. There are going to be other, I believe, districts in our region that maybe move in that same direction, but there are some that are 5. But again, my recommendation tonight is the 4 days with the remote, based on feedback I've gotten from teachers, principals, and from a health and safety standpoint.
And I have a comment.
So I'm gonna go with Reverend Kirkpatrick, and then I believe I heard Matt. Matt can go second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, after we get back from spring break and people are traveling, people are not going to stay at home because they don't stay at home now. What do we have in plan for cases rising within the school? Because people are already preparing to travel. I hear it in the community, and I hear it from some of my family members that as soon as I can get on the next plane somewhere or travel somewhere, I'm going. And so a lot of people will be traveling. And so when they come back, I mean, prayerfully, we hope that the numbers stay down. But the reality is, hopefully, they think there's going to be an increase because people are ready to, quote, live life, but not realizing that they can be asymptomatic and not even know that they're carrying it. So what plans do we have in place for that if that happens?
Thank you. I'll start, and then I'll ask Mr. McCraw to chime in. So number one, part of the plan is to communicate this week and next what the recent CDC guidelines are for international and national travel. We refer to those guidelines in our reopening documents on our website, but the CDC is changing those pretty often. So I've asked Dr. Breedlove to make sure that our principals know that all principals, K-12, are communicating those requirements for travel and quarantining, et cetera, upon return. The second part of it is we are going to be staffed during spring break with our nurses. They are going to continue to do a lot of our contact tracing efforts, reporting, data analysis, et cetera. That was not something we had in place from the 2-week winter break, but we do have nurses who have said, you know, sign me up. I'll continue to do this work during spring break to help try to mitigate the potential issues we may have. Mr. McGraw, I'll let you provide any other ideas or plans on that end.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Holland. Reverend Kirkpatrick, I think some of the things we already have in place will continue. Your temperature checks, your symptom screenings, the robust contact tracing program. You want to make sure that anybody that may be symptomatic goes home, or anybody that is a COVID positive case goes home. We also will put those strategies in place where we have seating charts, where we limit the number of close contacts as much as possible. We do know, just as you said, people are going to travel when it comes spring break or any holiday, but we do ask that people follow the guidelines from CDC if they travel. Make sure that they they look at that CDC website, and if it asks you to quarantine when you return, please follow that guidance. But those are some of the strategies that we'll implement. But we know there'll be positive cases, and we deal with those as they come, just as we have since August. And I think we've done a good job at that.
And we are aware that every case, that every individual with COVID, even if you check the temperatures, when I had it in August, my temperature was normal. And so I had no symptoms whatsoever. So even though we do take temperature checks every day, there's still a possibility that someone can have it and not even know it, but can affect someone else, and they're in ICU. So
you are correct, sir. Everyone has different symptoms when it comes to that, and we do our best. We work with public health daily. We get cases that involve school-age children from 5 years of age or kindergarten all the way up to our seniors, and we do the best we can at catching every case, but everybody does display different symptoms, as you said.
Okay, I believe Mr. Helms had a question.
Yeah, well, it's really a comment. I was just going to
Okay.
say, no matter what we do, I think we need to be consistent across the board. Not if we do 4 days for everybody, 5 days for everybody, just for the simple fact. Elementary school, if they're on 4 days and middle high school's on 5, those middle and high schoolers might be watching the elementary age kids potentially. So I just think we need to be consistent across the board. And I do have one question. Has the governor made any guidelines as far as what he would do to close down a district? Any thresholds?
I'm not aware of any of that. Mr. McCraw, unless you've received information from our local health department or state officials, I'm not aware of any protocol for that at the state level, but I don't know.
Dr. Houlihan, I'm not aware of any guidelines he's published yet for where he would move a district to Plan C.
It just seems as though that the legislation says that he has the authority to do so in case of is the authority point, I believe is what the law is.
And I think Union County Public Schools, as Reverend Benson mentioned earlier, Union County Public Schools has been the leader this entire school year, offering in-person learning since August 17th. And so I think Union County Public Schools and Jared, your team, nurses, Mr. Joyner, Ms. Lancaster, I think we have a pretty good record at this point of when to move a classroom to Plan C or when to move an entire school to Plan C. So, I think, we have the right people in place, to make those decisions, and they've been made before. And heaven forbid, we have to continue making those decisions. I know that we have the right people helping guide us through those processes.
Madam Chair, a couple comments and questions.
Yes.
The first one, so a little bit of clarity on Matt's comments, if I could ask him a follow-up question. You said that about consistency. So like if we're Plan A and the elementary school, you would opt that we go to Plan A in the middle and high schools as well. But so if you could clarify that, like, are you talking only Plan A? Or would there be any flexibility? So Dr. Houlihan, I think, made a very strong point where there are a lot of students that, given the fact that we've been in a remote learning situation, they're going to school 2 days a week, they do have jobs, they do have internships, they have other commitments that they've made, and they're still able to get their learning plans complete on those remote learning days. So I think we do need to offer that flexibility, as there are only 6 weeks left in the high school to the proposed April 12th date. So, rearranging everybody's schedule for just 6 days and kind of forcing it down their throat, I would not be in favor of that. So I just wanted a little bit of clarity on Matt's comments there.
Yeah, I was just saying basically, well, whatever we do with the middle and high schools, we need to be consistent with the elementary schools. So it's the same, either 4 or 5 days.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
like
So
if it's
so
4
plan
days,
A
it's 4
is the same.
days. If it's 5 days, it's 5 days for everybody.
Got it.
Not 4 days, 1 for elementary and 5 days for middle and high school.
Okay,
We need to be consistent across the board.
got it. The other is a question. So for Dr. Houlihan, I believe you said that Plan D to Plan A would be an option for middle school and high school, but the climate has changed since elementary school also made that decision to go to Plan D. Would we not offer that option for elementary school students as well, for those families to go from Plan D to Plan A if they so choose?
I think from a technical standpoint, and again, I'll refer to Ms. Morris, that, you know, does the legislation require all families to have the choice of in-person learning? If the answer is yes, then unless there's disagreement, we may have to or want to ask elementary under Plan D if they want to move to Plan A. That may be something that we have to do, but I'll defer to Ms. Morris because it really is up to what the legislation says. So Michelle, any thoughts on that?
Well, and I'll dig into that a little more. The biggest concern I have that's different between elementary and secondary is that we have class size limits in elementary. And we have been able to transition kids back and forth pretty fluidly up until this point. But when we hit the class size limits is where we have the issue. And so when parents have come to us saying, I want to switch plans, if we can make it work, or if there's a medical reason or something like that, we've been able to facilitate most of those. It's just the class size limitations in K-3 makes it a little more challenging than at the high school level.
And I think the other difference with elementary is that when we went to A and D, we have designated teachers that do Plan D and designated teachers that do Plan A. And that's going to be, she's talking about class sizes, but that's all about allotments. So if a lot of people leave one class, you could have 5 kids in a remote class and a lot of kids in a in-person class. So that's going to be a problem we're going to have to tackle if that actually happens.
Yeah,
Hasn't the state given us? Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say there's a lot of groundwork that has to happen then with regards to staffing, looking at those allotments, looking at who we have designated fully remote now, and is there enough population still opting for that option? Dr. Houlihan, what would is it even feasible to switch somebody, like to switch a teacher from a remote learning assignment to an in-class assignment at this point with only 6 weeks left in the school year?
I don't know how feasible that is going to be, given the fact that some of our teachers that have been fully remote also may have accommodations. And so we've got to work with HR on that piece. We've been able to successfully staff Plan D in that manner to meet that need. When you bring more students back, the thing that I think is going to be important with this is consistency. And so unless, again, we believe that we need to, from a legal standpoint, our plan right now is for elementary to keep you on Plan D if you selected that, and Plan A if you selected that. So I think that to answer your question, Mr. Morial, it will be difficult to just start moving people around and making adjustments with staffing, between now and April 12th. That will be very difficult to do at the elementary level.
Well, we could just leave it the way it is right now.
That is my proposal. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Helms, can you clarify what you mean by leave it the way it is right now?
Well, I guess in regards to moving from Plan A to Plan D, just leave it the way it is. No matter if we decide to go one additional day, just leave it the way it is. There's no opt in or opt out. It's just, you're in Plan A, you're in Plan A. And if you're in Plan D, you're in Plan D, but you can still do the individual route.
In elementary.
For elementary.
Unless the law tells us different. Unless we interpret the law different, we have to open it up.
Yeah, I think the legislation gives the opportunity for flexibility to do that. So that, you know, people have choices. They've given people choices, and I would not look at it as a you know, slamming it down, you know, anyone's throat. I would look at it as fulfilling our obligation now that we have an opportunity to do so.
Guess I viewed, sorry. I guess I viewed a little bit different. We've been in Plan A for elementary since October. So I would understand if this was meant for districts that were just going into Plan A now, but we did all this stuff back in October. So I guess that would be the difference for me between the
Right.
elementary and what
I
we're
agree.
doing now. But I understand your point.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate for a motion so we can further our discussion specifically?
So Gary, I have one question before you offer a motion. So I have received about a dozen emails, and this question is probably going to be directed to Mr. McCraw, if he could be prepared to help us with this question. I have received about a dozen emails specifically asking about if their middle school and high school student is moved back to 4 or 5 days in person, and they've only been going 2 days in person. What is going to be our board's position? What is going to be our district's position on wearing a mask? I mean, I know what the state is saying, but I just want to hear from Mr. McCraw and Dr. Houlihan. You know, what is school leadership and district leadership's position on wearing a mask in Union County Public Schools?
So Ms. Merrill, the governor of North Carolina issued a face covering mandate that we're required to follow. We've been following that since he provided that mandate. We're required to follow that. If he provides any updates where we don't have to wear a mask, I think we would revisit that. But at this point, face coverings are required on school property, inside the building, outside the building, on our property. They're required in transportation vehicles such as buses. We do take face covering breaks when students and staff can consistently maintain 6-foot social distancing. But we are required to wear face coverings, staff, students, and anyone who may come on campus per the governor's mandate.
So as
Mr.
soon
McGraw,
as
does that include athletic events?
Yes, sir, Mr. Price. You're talking about attendees, sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir. If it's on school property, we're required by the governor's mandate to require face coverings. There are certain conditions that are listed in the mandate, but we are required to wear face coverings.
Madam Chair, was those inquiries that you received, were they based upon the fact that it was a mandate and not a law? Was that the premise of those individuals? Because I received some of those
correct. And right, I think there's just a lot of confusion. That was the premise, Reverend Benson. And so there's a lot of confusion too. When you go out to dinner, once you're seated at your table, you're allowed to take your mask off. You know, when you're outside, you know, you can take your mask off. So there's been, again, you know, I've received about a dozen emails at this point. I didn't keep track, but it was significant in my mind, repeatedly, that, you know, going from 2 days, that they've had trouble 2 days, you know, having a student wear a mask for 2 days. What's it going to be like? And what opportunities are we going to provide as a district to let a child who's now going 4 or maybe even 5 days a week have a break wearing the mask, to take their mask off. So Mr. McCraw, when teachers allow a mask break, is that can you explain that? Is it a break somewhere in the classroom, or did they have to get a hall pass and leave the classroom? Or is it only when they're outside walking on a track or during PE? Can you speak towards what a mask break looks like?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Merrill. So of course, outside's going to be best because that's where you have the most airflow. But in a classroom, if you're 6 foot socially distanced from others, you can take a mask break. You just need to make sure that maybe a door's open, a window's open where we're supervising a door or window because there's security concerns with that. But the biggest piece of taking a face covering break is making sure that you're 6 feet socially distanced from other people. You can't do that inside the building, but we will be working with our administrators at schools to make sure students who need a face covering break can take one as long as they meet that 6 foot social distancing. But again, outside is the best, but you may have to take one inside where you increase airflow by opening a door or window that's supervised.
And I believe too, what we've learned through contact tracing is you have to be 6 feet apart or more and not with that person for more than 15 minutes. So if there were to be some type of mask break, I would assume that it would be everything you just said. They would have to be more than 6 feet away for significantly less than 15 minutes to be on the safe side with open doors or open windows. And our first preference would be outside, away from others.
Yes, ma'am. As far as contact tracing, a mask does not prevent you from being quarantined if you're within 6 feet for
right.
15 minutes. A mask is just one of the mitigating strategies that we use along with social distancing from others that may not be in your classroom, hand washing, and now the vaccine is going to be a mitigating factor. But just because you're wearing a mask does not mean you will not have to quarantine.
Okay. So I just want everyone to be thinking about, this mask issue. And I don't know if the 30 elementary schools struggled with this when they went from 2 days to 4 days, but I know a lot of middle school and high school parents are nervous about their student going from 2 days to 4 days or 5 days. But I think our elementary schools have done it successfully since October. I believe there was someone that wanted to ask a question.
I had a quick question for Jerry.
Mr. Sides.
I'm reading that the CDC may change the 6 foot distancing to 3 foot. Is the governor's mandate based on CDC recommendations? In other words, if the CDC does change their guidelines to 3 feet, then that is automatically adopted in our mask guidelines as well? Or will it take a separate action by the governor to adjust his mandate?
Mr. Sides, did you say on mask wearing? Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
Yes. It's my understanding. I've read somewhere that the CDC is close to modifying the 6 foot distancing to 3 foot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. So I know under the governor's mandate, that's what we're following. I can't make an assumption, but I assume that he would follow the CDC guidance because that's what the 2 documents we followed, the Lighting Our Way Forward and the Safe Schools Toolkit, follow CDC guidance. So in a Plan A classroom, you're going to be around 3 feet from other students. It's going to look like a classroom pretty well. That before COVID, before March 13th of 2020, our classrooms will look normal. So the students will be within 3 feet of each other.
So Dr. Houlihan, have you had any thoughts or had time to think about if a parent is not comfortable with their child wearing a mask 4 or 5 days a week, are we, teacher allotment wise, would we be in a position to allow students to move from plan A or plan B to all virtual plan D?
Yes, we are prepared that if you are currently on plan B or A and you want to move into virtual, per the legislation, we have to make that happen. So if a parent chooses to go from whatever learning environment they're in right now to virtual, we will be prepared to make that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
All right.
I have a question, Madam
Yes.
Chair. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So we have about 12 weeks left of school. Is that correct? Okay. So my concern is, and I am a strong advocate that children need to be in school. I believe that, especially a lot of the children who are in within our district here who have challenges outside of the educational component, they need to be in a structured environment. They need to be supervised. I get all of that. And I am pro school. But I'm looking at we're talking, I heard 5 days and 4 days and from plan A to plan D. Changing horses in the middle of the stream can be somewhat challenging, especially when a rhythm and a pattern has already been established. I think someone kind of made mention of that a few moments ago. And so as far as the 5-day component, let's say if we kept it at, I'm hoping that we do keep it at 4 days because it gives opportunity for teachers to do some things and sanitizing. Would it be possible that families, nurses could do vaccinations on Friday for students and families so that we can help to continue to decrease the spread of COVID and allow that Friday to be what it has always been, but put something else in place that is also a part of empowering and transforming our community so that when school begins in the fall, that we will be able to have at least we will have a greater number, encourage those individuals to come on Friday and get vaccinated so that preferably by August of this year, we won't be having these conversations that we're having right now.
I'll respond, and then Mr. McCraw, you can add on if I miss anything. So to your point, whenever we've been able to establish our vaccination clinics with Atrium Health and the health department, they have been on Fridays and Saturdays for many of the reasons that you listed. Our nurses have done a wonderful job staffing those clinics. Those have been for phase 1, 1A, 1B, as the governor has kind of moved the different phases into place. Anytime Atrium or in the health department would like to partner with us and our nurses, we make them available. And our nurses love doing that. It's a huge morale booster. When it comes to, and I would anticipate that would continue, right, in consultation and in partnership with them. When it comes to vaccinating students, I'm not aware of that being approved or being anything that's possible right now. I don't know when we'll have the green light to do that. I believe that there are still some trials being run on that situation. But what I would say is if and when we're available and ready, much like we've done for employees in the community, if we're asked or if we want to volunteer to partner, we will do that, of course, whether that's in the summer or whether that's during the school year. So, Mr. McGraw, any comments you would add to that, or is that correct?
You're correct, Dr. Houlihan. You covered it perfectly, sir.
So a follow-on question to that, if we were to go 5 days like it's been bantered around here this evening, how would we be able to do that with our nurses if the county needed them to do vaccinations?
I don't think we would. I think that would have to shift to a Saturday and Sunday kind of a situation, because we would need our nurses in buildings on Friday.
Okay, are there
Hey,
any
Kaylee,
more
can I
questions?
say one more thing? How many, we only have like, it's 12 weeks to the end of the semester, but I think we really only have about 10 weeks or 8 weeks of school left, right? Because it's the next 2 weeks, a short week, and then 6 weeks. So we're really looking at 8.5 weeks of school left, more than 12. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I think the legislation, if I read it correctly today, was we couldn't even start until April 1st.
No, we could start before April 1st if we wanted to, but it couldn't be later than April 1st.
Okay. And because I remember at our last meeting, we were saying that it would be like adding 6 or 7 more days by the time we return from spring break.
So we're talking about 6 weeks beginning April 12th. 1 week of that 6 weeks is high school exams. 2 weeks out of that is EOGs, correct?
Is it 1 week or 2 weeks of EOGs?
They're split up, right? Because of science and sorry, Dr. Houlihan can answer that better than me.
DPI gives you a 2-week window to complete it. We then work with schools to schedule it. So they must they don't last for the 2 weeks, but they have to fall within a 2-week period.
Gotcha. Okay.
Say we're talking about a small portion of time, especially since starting on the April 12th, we're only looking at probably 5 weeks of instruction, and the rest is either end of grade testing or finals or EOCs as well.
Okay.
You know, for me, it's all about getting back. And whether it's a few days, long days, this has taken a toll on everybody, from the teachers from Dr. Houlihan to the newest kindergarten. And I think that the more that we can do to have movement forward causes us to stay to our community that you know, we're somebody has to step up and keeping all the protocols, as Pastor Kilpatrick talked about, keeping all of those protocols, utilizing all of those protocols, but moving forward, moving in a direction where we both are safe and surviving. And these are measures that we can take to move forward. The psychological damage that's going on for everybody, at some point we need to say we are going to live.
Very well said, Reverend Benson. So if there aren't any more questions for Dr. Houlihan or Mr. McCraw, the board chair is ready to receive a motion based on the superintendent's recommendation.
Madam Chair.
I'll make that motion.
Yes, Mr. Sides?
I would like to offer a motion in 2 parts. First part would be that Union County Public Schools adopt Plan A for high and middle schools, and that the 12th, which is currently assigned as a virtual learning day, remain a virtual learning day. On Monday, the 19th, middle and high schools will go to a 5-day school week. On the 22nd of this month, next Monday, if it's mechanically possible, we reopen the registration either for middle and high students, parents which choose to revert their students to Plan D, or middle and high school students currently on Plan D to choose Plan A as proposed. I will offer that motion for hopefully a second and discussion. And to Mr. Helms' point, I'll be glad to renew, if this is successful, I'll be glad to renew my motion to move elementary schools to 5 days a week as well.
Can you say that
I
again,
make this-
Gary?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm sorry?
confused. Can you say it again, what your motion is? Because I'm a little confused.
I was going to ask you to do the same thing.
Thank you.
And,
I didn't
and just
understand.
for everyone's benefit, it did break up a little bit. So I
Okay.
think it would help to repeat that because that was a lot, Gary.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Effective April 1st, which would mean effective April 12th, when we return from spring break,
Uh-huh.
we would continue as planned, April 12th, a virtual day. In other words, we will go to Plan A, but the first week returning from spring break will be the 12th. That Monday will remain a virtual day, so we will go 4 days that week. The following Monday, the 19th of April, we will begin and continue through the remainder of the school year a 5-day school week for middle and high school students. I offer this motion because we were made very, very painfully aware of the significant drop in learning gap for our middle and high school students. They have not had the opportunity for 4 days a week as our elementary students have. And it has been noted in their academic decline, if you will. So every extra day we can get them in the classroom, in my mind, is critical.
So then why put it
The
off for
second-
the 19th? I'm confused about the
That's-
19th.
I know, I'm very confused.
I'm
about
very
the
confused.
19th.
Hold on. Dr. Houlihan, what are our options as far as this virtual day we're requiring on the 12th? Do we have the option to remove that virtual day entirely?
Yes,
Yes.
we went back and looked at the calendar. We have met the statutory obligation that was put forth by the General Assembly prior to the school year. So that removing that as a virtual learning day is an option.
All right, and then I will amend my motion that on April 12th, returning from spring break, middle and high schools will go to a full 5-day a week schedule through the remainder of the school year. The second part is next Monday, the 22nd, if it's mechanically possible then. I'll leave that to staff to suggest a different date. We reopen enrollment for any middle and high school students that want to go to D, have the option to do so. And any students currently on D that want to transition to Plan A also have the option to do so. So the 12th of April, when we return from spring break, we go to 5 days a week through the remainder of the school year, and we reopen enrollment either in or out of Plan D. That's my motion.
So for clarification, what will the elementary schools do on April 12th? Would they be remote learning in 4 days, or what is your suggestion? Because you said
I didn't want to direct, but if I'll just say this, if this motion is adopted, I will offer another motion, as I did at the last board meeting, to transition elementary schools to a 5-day school week, also on the 12th. So we will have uniformity throughout all grades. If this motion is successful, if not, I'm not going to
Okay,
force.
okay, I got you.
motion.
So your motion is only for middle school and high school as stated. Okay.
We go to 5
Can I
days.
offer amendment?
Yes, Mr. Helms.
Can I offer the amendment to also include elementary schools in Gary's motion?
I will be glad to accept that friendly motion or friendly amendment.
Okay, Reverend Kirkpatrick.
So we're saying that middle, high school go to 5 days. That's pretty much the
The motion,
motion.
And elementary.
the motion.
And elementary go to
And
5 days.
now elementary.
Everybody,
Starting
he's
April
saying everybody
12th.
go to 5.
Everybody go to 5. And we think that's going to make a difference within these next few weeks by the end of this year.
That is the motion. That
Okay.
is the motion.
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I'll second Gary's motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions from other board members to clarify this motion or of staff?
I don't have clarification, but I have comments.
Yes, feel free.
Okay. I think that one of the reasons that Dr. Houlihan recommended going 4 days and leaving Fridays open, because I just want everybody to understand, elementary school, a lot of stuff is happening separate. Virtual D is separate teachers than Plan A. Right now in middle and high schools, everybody, Plan B and Plan D are basically taught by the same teachers doing to work. So they use Fridays to catch up with the videos they have to do and all that kind of stuff. It's not a day to do nothing. It's a day that they're working. They're doing interventions, they're doing small groups, they're doing individualized support for students. So I don't want anyone to think that Friday is not a work day, because it's a work day. And it's a huge work day for elementary and middle school teachers, because they have a lot of work to do. My daughter is taking one virtual class because she couldn't get into a regular class, because that teacher is already teaching 3 blocks and she's doing virtual as well. So it doesn't work. Band doesn't work like that. Tons of classes don't look like that. So I just want to put it out there that I don't want people to think that nothing is happening on Fridays in our schools, because it's happening. And I'm sorry if there's some pockets of teachers or pockets of schools that it's not happening, but it's happening. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that they're going to lose that. And our teachers are still going to be in middle and high school wearing 3 different hats, or 2 different, it'll be 3 now again. So I just want everyone to understand that. That's all I wanted to say.
I thought, and thank you for that, Kathy. I guess I need Dr. Houlihan to speak into this, because I thought the whole purpose of the spring semester, and when we transitioned the elementary schools to 4 days, Plan A, 4 days, we allotted in-classroom teachers and Plan D teachers completely separate. So what I'm hearing now from Mrs. Heintel is that everything we did back in October is not happening, because our conversations back in September were that our teachers were wearing too many hats. So we told parents, you either have to sign up for Plan A or Plan D, because we can't have teachers wearing 3 or 4 different hats.
That was elementary school that we required that.
I thought you said elementary, and then you offered the example of the middle school.
Elementary does it that way. They do separate teachers doing virtual and separate in school, but middle and high schools don't do that. The teachers are wearing multiple hats. And
okay, then I misunderstood you. I thought you said elementary when you first started talking.
I'm sorry. Elementaries have the separation of the teachers, but not in the middle and high school. So they are wearing multiple hats. And Dr. Houlihan, you can, I'm sorry to me.
So our elementary.
I got a point of clarification real fast too.
Mr. Helms.
Gary's motion, are we opening up Plan A to Plan D switch for elementary? Or do I need to offer an amendment to leave it the way it is?
The legislation speaks to that. The legislation speaks to those
we have to
parents that desire to make those necessary changes, make it. That's in the law.
But we're not switching anything with elementary, we're just adding a day.
No, we're not switching.
Let me just offer this.
Melissa, to clarify, Melissa, in elementary, only AIG teachers and EC teachers wear multiple hats, and then the rest is separated.
I mean, because I know that was a big problem
Yes,
because
huge.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Helms, you and I went and visited several schools. And so I thought we had fixed that in the elementary schools. So I did not know you were speaking to middle and high.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Let me ask, would it clarify things if we uncoupled and maybe Mr. Helms withdrew his amendment and we just vote on middle and high right now and then maybe address elementary? Because maybe it does make sense because of the way we're utilizing staff to uncouple elementary from middle and high school. And so perhaps it would be cleaner for our purposes to just specifically address middle and high school. And then if Mr. Helms wants to offer a separate motion to go back and address elementary school, we do that. Would that be cleaner for everyone to address? Or do we just do everybody all at once? I am flexible either way. If Mr. Helms wants to withdraw his amendment, or if we should keep it all together and everything goes, does not pass.
Mr. Helms, would you like to keep it K through 12, 5 days a week, or do you want to take back your friendly amendment and only vote on 6 through 12?
I guess my concern is with what I said earlier, are we opening it back up with elementary school, even though they're our own Plan A? Or will they stay the same? I just need a clarification on that.
Well, the motion is whatever you want it to be. So that's what we need you to clarify your amendment.
Okay.
My original motion was just to address middle and high school. You offer an amendment to extend that to elementary school to transition to 5 days. And I'm just concerned that that is muddying the water here for middle and high school. And perhaps we should address these as separate motions. If you would withdraw your motion, or we could just vote on the whole thing. And then if that fails, I'll make a motion just to address middle and high. Whatever's the pleasure of the board.
Can I amend my amendment?
Yes, you may.
I offer the amendment to add one additional day to elementary schools, but leave there's no opening period where they can switch. It's just, if you're in Plan A, you're in Plan A. If you're in Plan D, you're in Plan D. It just stays the way it is. We're just adding one additional day for elementary.
Madam Chair, we wouldn't be able to do that simply because the legislation provides the options for those. So we wouldn't be able to do that. That would be overriding the law that was just passed.
That's my understanding as well, Reverend Benson. And I guess we would need Michelle Morris to confirm that that we are correct on that and that we can't do that.
I'm sorry, I am so confused right now as to what the motion is and what the question is. I apologize. I wish I could answer the question. I just don't know what it is.
Mr. Helms, I'm going to let you ask your question to Mrs. Morris to clarify.
I guess with Gary's motion, he stated that they open up students that want to move to Plan A, they can move to Plan A, or vice versa, Plan A to Plan D. My amendment was to just add one additional day to elementary schools. Do they also have to switch or have the open period where they can switch from Plan A to Plan D? Or can we just, because they're already in Plan A, technically?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a good answer. I have a concern that right now, the General Assembly has said parents have the right to choose. And the way the statute reads, it's choice from face-to-face to virtual. It doesn't say the reverse. The state board today seemed to then say the reverse is applicable as well. So now we have back and forth. We have already gone through this with elementary when we switched to Plan A in October.
October.
I think once you change things though, you're now moving from 4 to 5. You may be reopening the door to that. And so I'm going to have to do a little bit more thinking and reading, but I have a concern that if you add that 4th day or that 5th day, you are going to reopen that process, and that's of concern.
Why don't I decline to accept Mr. Helm's friendly amendment? And if this, so my original motion is just to move middle and high school to 5 days a week, beginning the Monday, April 12th, and reopening enrollment for Plan D, either in or out, for middle and high only.
Okay.
And then if Mr. Helm so chooses, after this, at some point, can offer a separate motion to address elementary, noting the concerns and some of the uncertainty we still have about elementary students possibly transitioning both ways on Plan D. So let's lay that aside.
Mm-hmm.
Just address middle and high school with my original motion that starting Monday after we return from spring break, middle and high schools will transition to full 5 days a week in class through the remainder of the school year.
Mr. Helms, are you agreeable to removing your friendly amendment or not?
Yeah, as long as Todd removes the second, yeah, I can move my amendment.
Okay, so we're back to Mr. Sides' motion. Do I have a second for middle schools and high school only?
Madam
I have a
Chair,
second.
Okay, so we have a second. Yes, Mr. Reverend Benson.
I was trying to get there before that second, because I wanted his amendment, I wanted his motion to be as clean as possible. And Gary, Mr. Sides keeps bringing up opening the door for the switching when, as I read the bill today, the law today, that's already addressed. It doesn't seem we need to address that concern because the legislatures and the governor, they've already addressed that concern. So his first part of his motion is fine, but I don't think we need to address the secondary part simply because the legislatures have already done so.
And you're referring to him directing staff to begin enrollment on the 22nd? Is that the part you disagree with?
Yeah, because the legislature, the language says that the parents have that ability to do so.
I think he's just directing staff on the date he wants it done.
Are you talking about a specific date, Gary, or are you talking about the process in its entirety?
He said March 22nd.
Right, and if staff feels that's not adequate time to put the mechanics in place to do it, that's fine. I just think, yes, we need to coincide our policy, our motion with the legislation in that we do formally agree to reopen registration in and out of Plan D, along with this change in the Plan A.
If it's just a date situation, Madam Chair, I concur, but I just want to make sure that that has been addressed.
Okay.
I think
so. Did someone have a comment?
I was just going to say from and working with staff, we know what the legislation says, and we know we have to move forward. We don't have a choice on this option. So to be quite honest, putting in a specific date of when staff needs to reopen or open scribbles or whatever that will be, I'm not comfortable with doing that right now because I haven't discussed the actual process and timeline. We know we have to do it before spring break. And as far as I'm concerned, we're going to have to move as quickly as possible on communicating that to parents beginning tomorrow. So I would like the board to understand we're going to move forward on that because we have to, and we know what timeline we're up against. We're going to take care of that.
Well, let me clean this up even further then. I need you to re-second. I'm going to make it even simpler. Starting Monday, April 12th, Union County Public Schools, middle and high schools will go to a 5 day a week in-class schedule through the remainder of this school year. That's my motion.
I second.
And for clarification, we're waiving for middle school and high school, the April 12th will not be a remote learning day for middle school and high school.
Correct.
And they will be in person.
Correct.
Okay, are there any questions? Are we ready to call a vote?
I have comments.
Ready for the question?
I have a question, but
Okay, Mrs. May.
okay. And it's just because if this is going to be a two-part, like that's part of my question. So less than 2 weeks ago, we talked about K-5 and we decided then we were going to stick with 4 days. We decided why rock the boat? It's been working really great. Stick with 4 days. We're talking about how we want consistency with elementary and middle and high all being on the same, but we're talking 4 days less than 2 weeks ago. So I'm worried because for me, middle and high going to 5 days, but then elementary staying 4 days, which we already talked about, how would that work? Or vice versa? Like, that's my concern if we're going to try to do this in 2 parts. I mean, because we're literally talking about once we get into finals, like maybe 5 extra days. So do we really want to like totally rock the boat for 5 extra days? That's just my question.
Could I address
Well,
your-
and that would be determined through the vote, I
Right.
guess.
Okay.
Do you have another question? Because I believe Mr. Moriel is next.
And then me after him.
Okay, Mr. Moriel.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I am very much in favor of returning the students back to the classroom. I did want to take a second and thank Dr. Houlihan for reaching out to the principals, working with the staff, working with the teachers, coming up with the recommendation of going to 4 days. That gets us twice as many school days for middle school and high school that they're getting right now. So again, thank you for doing that. And remind everybody that we are still in a pandemic, right? Like, we have not achieved herd immunity. We have now our teachers that have opted to get the vaccine, they will have their second dose. So I feel much more comfortable going into this situation, knowing that by the day that we're talking about, they will have, by CDC guidelines, achieved immunity. The recommendation again is to have Fridays as a remote day for a multiple number of reasons. So I want to make it clear that I am fully in favor of returning students back to the classroom. I'm also very much in favor of taking Dr. Houlihan's recommendation and putting that into motion. So with that, I will rest.
Mr. Moriel, before we go to Ms. Hightail, I do want to remind everyone that Dr. Houlihan did say that we had reached our quota for remote learning days. That's why he recommended that we could remove the 12th and be in person. So I just want to remind everyone, we have reached our quota on the required number of remote learning days. Mrs. Hightail?
I agree with what Joe just said. I thank Dr. Houlihan for reaching out to the principals and to teachers in the middle and high schools to get their feedback on what was going on. I guess back in October, we decided to leave it at 4 days for when we went to Plan A for elementary school. And I guess I would like to understand a little more from Mr. Sides or Mr. Price, why 5 over 4? Why get rid of the remote learning day? That would be my question.
And I'll be glad to address that in Ms. May's point as well. First of all, Ms. May, I would say that we have been inconsistent from October. Elementary schools have been 4 days and middle and high have been 2 days. So for us to be inconsistent moving forward, to have 5 days middle and high school is not even making up for the 4 days that elementary has had since October. So this whole school year has been inconsistent, but I understand your concerns. To Ms.
But only inconsistent because we couldn't do anything for middle and high school. So
I
the
understand, but
inconsistency. But it was
Nevertheless,
out of our power.
I
Sorry.
understand, but it still was inconsistent.
So now we have an opportunity to be consistent. And that's what we're trying to, come to agreement on tonight. We have the opportunity to make it more consistent.
My point is, middle and high school students have fallen farther behind
In elementary.
our elementary has been able to do. They've had more of an option of 4 days. Yes, it's only 5 or 6 days of additional in-class instruction, but that could be critical to some of our students who may be on the edge of failing and really being required or looking at being held back. We need to, and I can only go from personal experience, I think everybody will agree, virtual instruction will never replace in-class instruction.
Absolutely.
So we have a short time span to try and cover some of the gap that these middle and high school students have had because of the situation they're in beyond our control because of the law. My intent on making this motion is we will have our staff will be fully vaccinated, those that choose to do it. We will have additional days of instruction, particularly for the students that need it. And those days could make the difference for some of our middle and high school population. And that's why I make the motion to utilize as many in-class days as possible.
Thank you for that explanation. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Unless Todd wanted to address Kathy's concern, because she mentioned his name.
Only because he seconded.
I think Gary summed it up very well. Thank you.
All right.
And let's keep in mind, the elementary students would have, in our prior conversations, would have only gotten 6 or 7 more days in the classroom, but it's going to be significantly more than that by increasing the middle school and high school students. They're going to go from only getting 2 days a week to either 4 days a week, double, or potentially 5 days a week. So the middle school and high school students under this motion would be getting significantly more than just 6 days under their belt before the end of the school year.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, Reverend Benson.
I just want to, first of all, thank everybody for their patience tonight. Everybody is doing so well. I know this was an emergency, so it's just the preacher in me. I'm sure Pastor Kilpatrick feels the same way. You all have been extraordinarily patient today, but our team, our UCPS team, has been patient as well. And I just wanted to address before we conclude our meeting this evening. I'm sure that there are teachers watching. I'm sure that they're, feeling the weight of the moment. They've been feeling the weight, and their school board is debating and a motion on the floor of opening up even more. We are not doing this in absence of their concern. We're not doing this as if we don't care about the immense struggles that our teachers have had to go through this year. They have been challenged far beyond the degree that they walked across the stage at their universities to receive. And I want to commend them, but I also want to say to them that a lot of us, as Ms. May said a few weeks ago, I submitted to the recommendation of the 4 days simply because Union County is a leading county. But now with the data, the state legislatures, the leaders feeling that now is the right time. I don't think that if it was a matter of a few weeks, the state legislatures, there'd have been no need to move. But now is the time. And, you know, I want them to know that my heart is with them as it was a few weeks ago. But now my heart is with the children. When I read these emails from these parents that's saying, why are our children not in school? You know, their voices is in me now. A few weeks ago, it was the teachers, but today it's the students. That's my reasoning, you know, Miss Heidel, is that I want these kids to know that we do care about them and their ability to learn. And so that is why I am for the motion.
Okay, so we have received a motion and a second, and we've had plenty of discussion. I typically call the vote. Since this is Zoom, I typically start with District 1, and I don't want to do that to Reverend Kirkpatrick tonight. So I'm just going to work backwards, and I'm calling the vote.
You all are breaking me in real good.
So I'm not going to make you go first, District 1. So I'm going to work in reverse, just out of respect from our new board member. And I am going to start with our at-large members, and I will begin with Reverend Jimmy Benchen. Do you agree with the motion? Do you vote yes or no for the motion for middle school and high schools only?
Yes for the motion.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mrs. Heintel?
This is a hard one for me. I'm going to be honest with you.
It is.
I know, and I'm sorry. I would prefer 4, but I want kids to get back into school no matter what. And I want the parents to know that we support the kids as well as the teachers. And I also thought Dr. Houlihan had a good plan, but, you know, listening to everything that's going on here, I'm yes.
Mr. Morial?
I think I've made my point well clear. I would be more than happy to offer another motion if this one were to fail, to send the kids back to school 4 days in middle and high school. But I am a nay for 5.
You're a nay. Okay. I'm District 4. My vote is yes. Mr. Sides?
Yes.
Mr. Helms?
Yes, absolutely.
And Reverend Kirkpatrick?
Where'd he go?
Uh-oh, I hope we didn't lose him.
I had to go into my prayer closet.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yay or nay?
I'm not in favor of 5 days now.
Okay, so that's a no. So this motion passes 7-2 for middle school and high school students to return 5 days a week, beginning April 12th, with April 12th being made an in-person learning day and no longer a remote learning day for our middle school and high school students. Motion passes again 7-2.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Helms.
Yeah, I would like to make the motion to add an additional day to elementary school. And pending legal counsel review, if we need to open up from Plan A to Plan D, we do so. If not, we leave it the way it is.
I would second that, Madam Chair, but again, I think the legislation is clear on the parent's ability to make the choices. I don't think that there's anything to be looked up in terms of the choices. I like the motion but that second part of the language, I feel it is unnecessary.
Mr. Bencham, would you like to offer a motion? No, okay.
I don't want to deprive my good friend of the motion. I just really believe that the language of the law speaks to the ability of choice.
Well, I guess with my motion, I was trying to make it where if it is set in concrete with legislation, we go forth with that pending legal review. If they stay with Plan A, Plan D, the way it is now, they stay the same. That's just whatever legal counsel comes up with is what we can do. But
and Mr. Helms, I just want to clarify. I'm a little unclear about your motion myself. When you say add an extra day, are you recommending for elementary students to make April 12th an in-person learning day?
And yes, and also on April 12th to make in-person and the remainder of the year starting April 12th.
That broke up for me. I don't know if it broke up for anyone else, but your motion,
Okay.
I apologize, broke up.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
It would start on April 12th, the same as middle and high school, going to 5 days for elementary school.
Okay, so your motion is to make April 12th an in-person learning day and move all elementaries to 5 days per week.
Correct.
Okay.
I can second that.
Reverend Bencham, you second?
I can second that.
Okay, so that opens the board up for questions or comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I want to first say, because I'm listening and I've heard people even prior to this meeting, have conversations publicly and what have you about if we don't go 5 days, then we don't care. And if we do go 5, all of these conversations. And I am a strong advocate for education, especially in the district that I serve. I know the challenges of especially the Black and brown population that we serve. I know, all right, I am born and raised here, and I know all about it. And so I don't want it to be expressed as if we don't care that kids don't go to school, but this is a beast that has already crippled us. And we have been crippled in more ways than one. And my reason for, and I heard Dr. Houlihan talk about on Fridays, they disinfect the building and all of these things, which are very much needed. And if we take away that we take away that Friday. I mean, granted, we know we all were in school for 5 days, all right? But right now it's how it is. And so looking at allowing these kids to go to school for 5 days now, okay, when elementary schools have maybe 16 or 17 kids in the classroom, you're talking about babies who are in a classroom, okay, who are already struggling with 4 days to keep being distant from each other, all right? Mask these, and especially the children within our special needs program, which is a program that I have worked with for many years. And these children, some of them have other ailments, which cause them to be more prone to even receiving COVID-19 and puts them in a high risk of danger. And so I'm not understanding. We have, I think she said 8.5 weeks left. All right, we're almost at the finish line. And truth be told, and this is no slack, but if we look at the performance right now, this conversation should have been had months ago. If we were really concerned about these kids failing, you don't not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 weeks prior to the end of the school year, we talk about, all right, we want to change now so that they can succeed. These kids and these parents have already indoctrinated within their minds where they are. Is that good? No. Is that right? Absolutely not. But what we're going to have is not only do we say, are we going to see that parents feel as though we don't care, but we're going to see staff members who feel as though we're just in it for a particular reason or what have you. And what's going to happen is people are going to transition. Some of them have already been on the edge about working in education anyway. So now this pandemic, it has caused some negative tension, but if we really look at it, it has the ability to really strengthen us even the more by showing faculty and staff, because you can send kids to school all day long, but if there's nobody there to teach them, then what's going to happen is they're going to continue to decline. And teachers are frustrated, parents are frustrated. In every pandemic and every sense of war, there's always casualties. I know that, and I believe in that. But I think if we're really going to be concerned about now and then, we got to look at the bigger picture of what this is producing and what this can establish for tomorrow, because we're going to have to spend many days rebuilding, even if they go to school 4 days or 5 days. And the pattern that has been established for these children, for these parents, and these teachers, I believe that what we need to do is empower them while they're going through. Because just because two schools look the same don't mean they are the same. I mean, when we talk about pattern or we talk about uniformity, just because at the end of the day, uniformity can look much bigger than me having on the same jacket that you have. I can be uniformed in other ways. And so I'm really concerned because I have educators within our church, and our church, we provide them an opportunity to come. We don't tell them they have to come, but we provide an opportunity for them to come, because as we are rebuilding, as we are building and trying to restructure some things, it's going to require us to really be sympathetic, and as well as express empathy to our teachers, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen if we come into next year and the school year starts, and now we're going to have to find ourselves trying to find more teachers, because they feel as though, you know what, they didn't care nothing about us in the midst of a pandemic, because they were so concerned about 5 days instead of really looking at that
Reverend,
5th day.
yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's a lot that we have to look into. I'm big on education. I am big on it, and I encourage it, and I express it day in and day out. And I know that children need to be in school. They need to eat. They need to be in structured environments. But what's going to happen? We're going to bite ourselves, and we're going to cut off our own foot. All right, because at the end of the day, some of these people are looking to see how will we handle it, because we can empower them even in a 4-day plan just as much as we can in a 5-day plan, if we structure and if we create a program that's going to help everybody win. So I think go ahead, I'm done.
The issue is we just approved 6 through 12 going 5 days. So their older siblings are now at school on Fridays. So if parents work, we just made it so that the elementaries they stay home on Friday. I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
And I also want to just, Reverend Kirkpatrick, I definitely understand your frustration. I will share with you that all of us have been frustrated this entire school year. And I wish we could have had this conversation months ago. But the sad truth is that Raleigh gave us the permission to move elementaries back in September, but they did not give us permission for middle school and high school until last week. And I think that's been the biggest frustration, is that our elementary students have been getting 4 days a week, and their failure rates at the 30 elementary schools are significantly less than the failure rates at our middle school and high schools that were only allowed per Raleigh to be on Plan B. So in Union County Public Schools, with the number of students we have to manage, being the 6th largest school district, that unfortunately that meant our middle schools and high schools could only come 2 days a week because of the sheer numbers. And so we weren't given that opportunity to have this discussion to move them to Plan A until today. So I understand completely your frustration. But the way I see it is that the motion that has already passed is going to hopefully allow our middle school and high school students the days they deserve in class that our elementary students have already been receiving. So, so we're going to be able to double up on the number of days between now and June to give our middle school and high school students what our elementary school students have already been receiving. And that was not our decision. That was a decision from the state.
Madam Chair, I want to say to our honorable District 1 member that there has been a voice. Before I got on, you could hear Gary's voice. Gary has been a longtime advocate of, in school all the time. And that's been my position since coming on the board. So it has been brought up, but the chair and the vice chair has talked about the inability of us to make personalized decisions because of the legislative mandates that we were under, but it has been talked about. We now have an opportunity to act. And again, I say to those out there, this is not done in isolation or just as a way to just do something. Look how long we've been on here. We're wrestling, we're debating, we're talking to each other. We're doing what elected individuals do. And at the end of the vote, there's always going to be those that would have wanted it to go another way. And to those, I say, don't think we don't care, because we do. And we will do all. I only go back to the few weeks ago when I voted in favor of those teachers with that 4th day. But now that we have an opportunity to go full bore, I move in that direction.
Well, a lot has changed since that discussion. We've had a bill passed, and we've had compromise between the governor and the General Assembly, and we've had a press conference. We've heard from Catherine Truitt, our new state superintendent. So a lot has happened since we had that last conversation. And board members, the CliffsNote version for me, and I'll just share what it comes down to me, is I believe that Raleigh saw the failure rates in January and February coming in from 115 districts across the state. And in my mind, I can only imagine how mortified everyone in Raleigh was, the State Board of Education, DPI, the governor, the House, the Senate. I believe they were as horrified as we were when we saw our failure rates. And again, our middle school and high school was, 19 to 37% failure rate, because they were not allowed to have the number of days that elementary school students were. So I believe in January and February, when all of our failure rates started being reported, I believe that's when the legislature got real busy writing this bill and compromising, across the aisle, which led to the press conference last week. And so here we are, eight and a half weeks left in the school year. And we just now have permission to educate our children and give them what they deserve. So that's the CliffsNote version for me on why it's just now happening. Are there any other board comments?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I don't mean to throw more for you to consider, Reverend Kirkpatrick, but let me just offer this as part of your struggle. If you look at literacy scores for elementary students prior to the pandemic, who struggled the most? Our Title I schools. And they are more likely to have parents that are working, single parents, and have on the days, the Fridays that they're not in school, they have an unstructured and possibly unsupervised day. And I feel personally, the younger they get, the less value there is in a virtual day. They need to be in the classroom. We have worked, our health department and UCPS staff have done the best job in the state of North Carolina in protecting our teachers in our vaccination progress. We're light years ahead of everybody. I would also propose that we use whatever resources are necessary to adequately compensate our maintenance staff to make sure the deep cleans that we've previously done on Fridays are handled in the evenings or the weekends so that we don't lose ground there. But, and as Ms. Heintel mentioned, since now families with older siblings who were watching over their younger siblings on those Fridays, because again, both parents were working, now will not have that resource. And the additional days of instruction in the middle school as well as middle and high could make the difference for a lot of students that are on the edge of failing and potentially being held back versus getting the instruction they need and may not have to attend this, looks like it's coming summer school, or still may make some progress and still need the summer school to get them where they need to be. But middle and high have been taking it the worst because they've been in class the least. So that tells me whatever days we can utilize to get them in the classroom as quickly as we can, we should. And our elementary may be the most vulnerable in the end because they are so young and incapable of getting a real value out of that virtual day. That is something that we need to consider. And that was my original thought process when I made this motion. And as the chair mentioned, the whole ball game's changed since then. And so I would just offer those points for your
Consideration.
Seemingly very heartfelt deliberation. I see you struggling, and welcome to the party because they don't a whole lot easier.
I guess it's not so much of a struggle as it pertains to how I feel. And when you mentioned about the Title I, the truth of the matter is this pandemic just added on to the issues that were already in the structure of Title I. And that's a whole nother day, a whole nother board meeting. But
how many of our elementary students, not just Title I, anywhere, aren't getting a decent lunch because they're not in school?
Oh, I agree 100%. I agree. And that's exactly why during this pandemic, what we did, we provided those opportunities because when it's all said and done, when hardship comes, the community should be the first ones to speak up. So to deal with that issue, as far as, again, like I said, that's another day. These community organizations should have been open feeding kids. But again, that's another conversation. And at the end of the day, like I said, this is a major issue. And
major kudos to our child nutrition, who I believe have served over 1 million meals and snacks since last March, and provided meals on Friday through the weekend. So I know our child nutrition has done an absolutely amazing job, and with Mark Strickland's leadership and his child nutrition team. And again, our SROs, I've said it before, our SROs are out there helping hand out meals and making sure that the Friday lunch has food through the weekend. So I do want to acknowledge that. So getting back, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have a motion from Mr. Helms, and we do have a second. Was it from Reverend Benson?
Yes.
Okay, so if there aren't any more questions or comments, I would like to call the vote for our elementary schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Helms, your motion was for elementary students for April 12th to no longer be a remote learning day, that it would be in person. And beginning April 12th, they would be in person 5 days a week.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm going to begin in the same order as I did last time. Reverend Benson.
Aye, for the motion.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Price.
Yes.
Mrs. May.
Yes.
Mrs. Heintel.
Yes.
Mr. Morial.
Yes.
For myself, I am a yes. Mr. Sides.
Yes.
Mr. Helms.
Yes.
And Reverend Kirkpatrick.
No.
No. Okay, so this motion for elementary schools passes 8-1. Okay. Are there any closing comments from board members or
Yeah.
staff?
There is for me.
Okay, I'll start with Mr. Morial.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I saw your reaction when I just voted, so I feel like I need to explain myself a little bit here. So,
Okay.
I
I was
this is
expecting
to
a
drive
no, sorry.
consistencies. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was keeping track and I was just expecting a no and had to write something different.
So this is to keep consistency across our schools. In addition, we do have many high schoolers that are watching their elementary siblings on Fridays, and I think we've inconvenienced families enough with regards to childcare and whatnot. So that was my reason for the vote. So thank you.
Yeah, if you saw my notebook, you would understand how messy my notes have gotten. I apologize. Mrs. Heintel.
I would like to say too, I understand that some of our teachers and staff are not going to like this decision because remote learning Friday was what was getting them through. I think that for 6 weeks of learning, we have to understand that teachers and staff can't make miracles out of 6 weeks. So we have to be realistic about what's going to go on in those 6 weeks. I think it's important to get kids back into school, which is why I voted yes. I wish that we could have done 4 days instead of the 5 days, but I understand that's where everybody was going and I'm good with it, but it's important to get kids back into school, but it's also important to understand what our teachers and staff are going through right now as well. They are working a lot. Even with the Friday remote day, they're still working over the weekends, doing videos and catching up on grading and things like that. So I just want to give a shout out to teachers and staff. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Reverend Benson.
I always think the best of people, and I believe that that there is frustration. Trust me, some of it is instantaneous. But I also believe that now that the vote has been given and there is clarity at least in what they're supposed and what they're to do, I believe that they will once again amaze us and accomplish this task. angry, upset, mad even, but they will not fail. These are teachers of Union County Public Schools under a great superintendent, and they will not fail. They will succeed. They will carry out their mission. And I believe that with everything inside of me. And I appreciate them more than they will ever know.
Yeah, I agree. Any other board members closing comments?
I'd like to make a brief comment.
Mr. Sides?
I understand the concerns that our educators will undoubtedly have because of this decision. I want to tell you it was not an easy one. I have personally witnessed the effects on my 8th grader, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I hope that, and I trust that staff will do everything, and our great principals and teachers will pull together to facilitate this transition as best we can. It is very obvious that across the board, to varying extent, the kids have suffered. And at some point we have to say, we're going to push through, and we're going to, for the kids' sake, their social well-being, their mental health, as well as their educational progress, we're going to move on and trying to get back to some resemblance of normal. If you are an educator and you have not taken advantage of the vaccine opportunities, I would encourage you to do so if you feel that is the right thing for you. If you don't, it is certainly a choice. I know staff will do everything they can to reorganize our cleaning procedures and our existing safety procedures, masking, et cetera, will of course stay in place. We will do everything to facilitate this transition. But the number one thing is we've got to get these kids back to some resemblance of normal. And that was the reasoning behind my pursuing and supporting these motions. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I just want to thank Dr. Houlihan and Jared McCraw and Dr. Houlihan, you and your entire team. In my personal opinion, I think Union County Public Schools is extremely blessed and fortunate to have you as our superintendent, because you have been a leader from day one of this pandemic. And I know your recommendation tonight was to return to 4 days with Friday remote. And I know that you and your team, working with principals last week and your teachers advisory council, you have done all of the right things in my book. Our teachers, our educators, our principals are absolute heroes in my book. And I just want to thank everyone, every employee in Union County Public Schools. But I have seen firsthand what Dr. Houlihan has been through, Dr. Breedlove, Jared McCraw, and all of our nurses. And I could not be more appreciative and more thankful, Michelle Morris, for all of your hard work, your overtime, your leadership. And I regret that the recommendation was not taken fully in how you presented it. But I know in everyone's heart that getting our students back in the classroom, especially our middle school and high school students, who the data clearly shows, they are suffering. They are not prepared for promotion or college and career readiness. And I think given the fact that our legislators that we count on to represent us in Raleigh, whether it's calendar flexibility or any other need that we have called our representatives in Raleigh, they have worked their nails to the bone, to get the Senate bill passed and then to work out a compromise, with our governor to be able to offer 4 or 5 days learning. So I think, out of respect for our middle school and high school students that are failing, and out of respect for our legislators and everyone in Raleigh who is encouraging us in this direction, I feel good about what the board has done tonight. And I look forward to our middle schools and our high schools and our elementary students to gain more days and more experience under their belt at the end of this school year, so that they know what to expect come August. Because everyone has said in August, we're going to be 5 days a week. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to transition to that and to determine what students are truly ready for promotion. Have some really good lessons before EOGs and EOCs and finals, and to have a 5-day mindset, what to expect when we all come back in August. So I just want to thank everyone for their time. Again, Dr. Houlihan, Michelle, Jared, Dr. Breedlove, Mark Strickland. We just could not ask for a better team, and I am personally thankful, for everything that you have brought to us tonight and since last March. Are there any other closing comments, or I will accept a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, in a second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.